In 1971, Archie Bunker sat in his chair and began to speak, and what came out of his mouth sent shockwaves across America. The controversial character sparked such outrage that even the White House took notice. Secret tapes later revealed that President Richard Nixon personally attempted to get the show banned. At the time, television networks avoided political controversy, but producer Norman Lear was willing to risk everything on a character who would become one of the most polarizing figures in TV history. The inspiration began in early 1967, when Lear came across a short article in Variety about a British sitcom called Till Death Us Do Part. The show focused on a grumpy, working-class father constantly arguing with his left-wing son-in-law. The premise resonated with Lear. Although he hadn't seen a single episode, he immediately bought the rights. Once Lear finally watched it, he found it too abrasive for American audiences. Still, the core idea, generational and ideological conflict in a working-class household, had power. Instead of directly adapting it, Lear used the concept as a springboard and built something original, drawing from his own life. Archie Bunker was partly inspired by Lear's own father, a man known for shouting at his wife to stifle herself and once described as the laziest white man I ever saw. Those real-life phrases would go on to become iconic lines on American television. The journey to the screen began in 1968 with a pilot for ABC titled Justice for All. Carroll O'Connor and Gene Stapleton played the lead couple, whose last name at the time was Justice. The characters were similar to what they would eventually become, though Michael Stivic was named Dickie, and Lionel Jefferson already had a role in the storyline. The pilot revolved around a surprise anniversary party that devolved into arguments about social issues. ABC, however, rejected it, claiming the show was too edgy and that the couple lacked chemistry. Undeterred, Lear brought a second pilot to CBS in 1969, titled Those Were the Days. The leads remained the same, but supporting roles were recast. The tone was slightly softened, and Edith was given more strength, while Archie showed glimpses of vulnerability. This version also introduced the now famous theme song, although the Manhattan skyline was not yet part of the visuals. CBS hesitated, but a year later, they reconsidered. They renamed the show All in the Family and changed the family name from Justice to Bunker. A pivotal moment came when Lear originally considered Mickey Rooney for the role of Archie. Upon hearing about the character's controversial opinions and racist remarks, Rooney refused the part, warning Lear that it was dangerous and un-American. His refusal cleared the path for Carroll O'Connor, who had caught Lear's attention in a 1966 film role. Though skeptical about the show's prospects, O'Connor agreed to sign on, but only if Lear promised him a return ticket to Rome in case it failed. Gene Stapleton was equally instrumental. Lear had trouble casting Edith until he remembered seeing Stapleton on Broadway in Damn Yankees. During their first meeting, she intuitively understood the character's quiet power. She even created Edith's iconic high-pitched voice herself. Though Edith seemed naive, Stapleton ensured she had moments of wisdom that could deflate Archie with just one line. Rob Reiner's journey to the show stretched back to childhood. His father, comedy icon Carl Reiner, was a close friend of Norman Lear. Lear had seen young Rob making jokes as a kid and remembered him years later. Despite his father calling him surly, Lear cast Rob as Michael Meathead Stivic, the liberal son-in-law. Their professional relationship blossomed beyond the show. Lear later funded Reiner's directorial debut, This Is Spinal Tap, helping launch his career in filmmaking. Sally Struthers also landed her role through unexpected circumstances. At her audition, Rob Reiner was already cast, and his real-life girlfriend, Penny Marshall, was auditioning to play Gloria. Struthers assumed she had no chance. Penny and Rob had natural chemistry, and Penny looked more like Gene Stapleton. But Struthers got the role. Years later, she asked Lear if she was the funniest actress. His answer surprised her: no. He said she got the part because her blue eyes and round face resembled Carroll O'Connor's, making audiences more sympathetic toward Archie by showing how much he loved his daughter even if they hated his views. Struthers went on to appear in 157 episodes and win 2 Emmys. But the road to success wasn't smooth. In 1969, ABC had just experienced a public disaster with the sketch comedy show Turn On, which was pulled from some stations mid-broadcast due to offensive content. The backlash was so severe that ABC canceled the show within days, leaving the network reluctant to take further risks. When Lear pitched a sitcom starring a loud, bigoted main character, ABC passed, unwilling to face another controversy. CBS, on the other hand, was taking a bold new direction. They were phasing out rural sitcoms like Green Acres and the Beverly Hillbillies in favor of more modern, socially relevant programming. They saw potential in Lear's concept and picked up the show, now titled All in the Family, with O'Connor, Stapleton, Reiner, and Struthers in the lead roles. Still, CBS wasn't entirely confident. They scheduled the premiere for a late Tuesday night slot following Hee Haw and ordered just 13 episodes. Expectations were low. Then came January 12, 1971, the night everything changed. All in the Family didn't ease viewers into its world, it dropped them into the deep end. In the very first episode, Archie Bunker returned from church and launched into a tirade. Within minutes, he unleashed a series of slurs, insulted his wife, mocked his son-in-law, and made it clear he had no filter. Nothing like this had ever aired on American television. CBS ran a disclaimer before the episode, warning audiences that the show aimed to reveal the absurdity of bigotry by laughing at it. Behind the scenes, the network was nervous. Anticipating a flood of complaints, they brought in extra phone operators. But the backlash never came. Some viewers were confused. A few called to ask if the show was coming back. But there wasn't an uproar. Instead, America leaned in. Initially, the ratings were modest. The show ranked 34th in its first season. But over the summer, reruns gained momentum. Word of mouth spread. People began telling their friends, "You have to see this." CBS took notice. When the new season began, they moved All in the Family to Saturday night at 8 p.m. prime time. The gamble worked. The show exploded. By the end of the 1971-72 season, All in the Family was the #1 show in the country. It held that top spot for 5 consecutive years, something that had never happened before. Every week, millions tuned in to watch Archie Bunker clash with his family, offend just about everyone, and yet still expose deeper truths about American society. The show was crude, raw, and real. In 1976, the writing team crafted a Christmas episode that nearly didn't make it to air. Writer Jay Moriarty had penned a script called The Draft Dodger, but it got lost. His agent, without telling him, said Norman Lear wasn't interested. That wasn't true. The script found new relevance in 1976 when Jimmy Carter, then running for president, announced his intent to pardon Vietnam War draft dodgers. Suddenly, Moriarty's story wasn't just controversial, it was timely. The episode brought the Vietnam conflict straight to the Bunker household. Archie invited his friend Pinky Peterson over for Christmas dinner, a Gold Star father whose son died in Vietnam. But Mike, Archie's son-in-law, brought an unexpected guest, David, a young man who had fled to Canada to avoid the draft. When Archie discovered David's background, he erupted in anger. He expected Pinky to feel the same. Instead, Pinky delivered a stunning moment of grace. He said that although his son died in the war, he could still understand David's decision. "David's alive to share Christmas dinner with us," Pinky said. "If Steve were here, he'd want to sit down with him." It was a powerful scene, a single table capturing a country still divided by the war. CBS approved the episode, but then got cold feet. Network censors were especially uncomfortable with a moment when Archie, in frustration, took the Lord's name in vain. Lear was forced to overdub the line. What aired instead, "I don't want to talk about that rotten dead one no more," felt jarring and out of place. The mismatched audio was obvious, and the emotion was diluted. It was a classic example of 1970s TV censorship, trying to clean up something raw, only to make it feel more artificial. Lear had seen it before. He once said network executives would panic if even 50 or 60 people complained enough to trigger last-minute edits. But this episode went on to resonate in a new way. Just weeks after it aired, Jimmy Carter was inaugurated. On his first full day in office, he signed Proclamation 4483, granting unconditional pardons to all Vietnam draft dodgers, whether they had fled to Canada or simply refused to register. Over 200,000 men were now free to return to the U.S. without prosecution, yet the nation remained divided. Polls showed only about 20% of Americans supported the move. Just like around Archie's dinner table, the real country was still split. Years later, in 2019, All in the Family found new life. Norman Lear teamed up with Jimmy Kimmel to recreate classic episodes in a special titled Live in front of a studio audience. The event featured stars like Woody Harrelson as Archie and Jamie Foxx as George Jefferson. They used the original scripts nearly word for word, but in one scene, when a racial slur appeared, ABC bleeped it out. The same word had aired uncut in the 1970s. Times had clearly changed. Lear had anticipated this. He had already seen reruns on networks like Antenna TV being edited or censored. Even decades later, his work was still too raw for some audiences. But Lear never apologized for stirring the pot. That, he always said, was the point. Born in 1922, Norman Lear infused his work with personal truth. Archie Bunker, after all, was inspired by Lear's own father, the man who used to tell his mother to stifle herself. But Lear didn't create shows just to provoke. He created them to reflect what real families were actually facing. In his words, "I don't think I consciously thought that anything we were doing was controversial. But it was." All in the Family tackled the untouchable: abortion, racism, religion, war, inequality. And it didn't blink. Take the 1972 episode The Bunkers and the Swingers. In it, Edith, ever sweet and naive, responds to a personal ad from a couple looking for new friends. She thinks it's just about companionship, but her daughter Gloria realizes the truth: the couple are swingers. The misunderstanding leads to one of the show's funniest and most uncomfortable moments, sparking a flood of letters and another wave of headlines. All in the Family wasn't just a TV show. It was a cultural earthquake. It shook American living rooms. And in doing so, it changed television forever. One of the most unforgettable episodes of All in the Family was The Bunkers and the Swingers, which aired in 1972. It started with Edith innocently answering a personal ad from a couple looking to make new friends. What she didn't realize, but her daughter Gloria did, was that the couple were swingers, looking to swap partners. Before Gloria could explain, the couple arrived. Curtis and Ruth Rempley, played with comedic brilliance by Vincent Gardenia and Rue McClanahan, brought expensive gifts: French perfume for Edith, fine cigars for Archie, assuming they were setting the mood for a romantic evening. Meanwhile, the Bunkers, in their usual clueless fashion, took everything at face value. The guests misread every innocent comment as flirtation. At one point, Curtis admired Archie's prized chair and called Edith a wildcat in disguise. The slow-burn comedy built on awkward misunderstandings created a perfect blend of discomfort and hilarity, the kind that made All in the Family iconic. Audiences loved it. So did critics. The episode still holds a 9.0 rating on IMDb. Remarkably, every actor involved in that episode would go on to win an Emmy, a rare and telling achievement. Just a year earlier, the show had broken even more ground with the episode judging books by covers. It marked the first time a gay character appeared on a mainstream American sitcom in primetime. The story cleverly played with audience expectations. Archie mocked Mike's friend Roger for being effeminate, assuming he was gay. But the surprise twist came when Archie's own drinking buddy, a macho, ex-football player named Steve, turned out to be the one who was actually gay. It was a moment of subversive brilliance, both funny and socially powerful. But not everyone appreciated it. President Richard Nixon himself accidentally tuned in while searching for a baseball game. His reaction, recorded on the now infamous White House tapes, was one of outrage. He called the episode pro-gay propaganda and said it should be pulled off the air. That incident underscored just how deeply All in the Family was challenging the culture, even at the highest levels of government, and that was the point. The show was designed to make viewers question their assumptions. Archie's reasoning in the episode was intentionally flawed and absurd, offering lines like, "A guy who wears glasses is a four eyes. A guy who's a fag is a queer." The dialogue wasn't written to endorse bigotry, it was meant to expose its ridiculousness by saying it out loud. 2 years later came another pivotal episode, Henry's Farewell. For the first time, viewers met George Jefferson, a character previously only referenced. The episode centered around a going-away party for his brother Henry. But true to form, tensions quickly rose. Archie refused to step foot in the Jeffersons' home, while George refused to enter Archie's. Eventually, they were forced to confront each other. The scene was tense, funny, and unflinchingly honest. Two proud, biased men finally face to face, neither willing to back down. Nearly 50 years later, that very episode was revived as part of the 2019 special Live in front of a studio audience. Woody Harrelson stepped into Archie's shoes, while Jamie Foxx played George Jefferson. Introduced by Norman Lear and Jimmy Kimmel, the live remake was a hit, winning multiple Emmys. Some moments were altered. For example, the scene where Mike sprays Archie with water from a fake flower was cut, but the heart of the episode remained intact. The fact that it still resonated after so many years spoke to the enduring power of Lear's storytelling, but that power didn't always work the way Lear intended. Archie Bunker was meant to be a cautionary tale, a man clinging to outdated views, surrounded by younger, more progressive voices like Mike and Gloria, who constantly challenged him. Lear's hope was that audiences would laugh at Archie's ignorance and recognize the need for change, but something unexpected happened. People didn't just laugh at Archie, they started to like him. Not ironically, but sincerely. Carol O'Connor played him with such depth and charisma that many viewers found him relatable. Some even agreed with him. By 1972, Archie had become such a cultural figure that someone actually cast a vote for him as vice president during the Democratic National Convention. Politicians began referring to the Archie Bunker vote, a way to describe the opinions of working-class Americans who felt overlooked and frustrated. Instead of rejecting Archie's views, many embraced them. It wasn't just a blue-collar phenomenon, either. Archie's plain-spoken resistance to social change struck a chord with viewers from many backgrounds. As O'Connor himself later said, there were many people who thought Archie was 100% right. This wasn't a new dilemma. The British series Till Death Us Do Part, the inspiration for All in the Family, had seen the same thing happen. Its bigoted main character, intended to be satirical, ended up beloved by audiences who agreed with him. Author Laura Z. Hobson warned of this very risk. In 1971, she published a sharp essay in the New York Times accusing All in the Family of normalizing bigotry. Hobson wasn't just any critic, she was the author of Gentleman's Agreement, a landmark novel about anti-Semitism. She argued that making Archie lovable undermined the satire. Despite the jokes, she said, viewers were laughing with him instead of at him, and that made his prejudice feel acceptable, even endearing. Her son echoed her concern, noting that the show risked framing bigotry as a uniquely working-class problem, when in reality, it existed at every level of society. By focusing on a blue-collar family in Queens, the show could unintentionally let more privileged forms of prejudice off the hook. Despite the criticisms, Lear stood by his creation. He understood the risks of satire, but also believed in its power. All in the Family didn't always land perfectly, but it broke boundaries, opened conversations, and changed what television could be. Archie Bunker, 4. Better or Worse, had become a mirror for America, one that still reflects uncomfortable truths today. Norman Lear wasn't going to stay silent. A month after Laura Z. Hobson's scathing critique, he responded with an essay of his own. In it, he posed a simple but piercing question: hadn't Hobson ever known someone who was both lovable and bigoted? A friend, a relative, maybe even a parent? That, Lear explained, was the essence of Archie Bunker. He wasn't a caricature or a villain, he was human. His bigotry came not from cruelty, but from fear and confusion in a world changing faster than he could keep up with. Lear believed humor was the key to reaching people. Rather than preaching, he wanted the show to act as a mirror, reflecting America back to itself. CBS, however, had concerns of its own. When All in the Family premiered on January 12, 1971, the network aired a disclaimer before each episode, making it clear that the intent was to ridicule prejudice, not promote it. They even hired extra phone operators, bracing for a storm of backlash, but that storm never came. The premiere drew modest numbers, only about 15% of U.S. households tuned in, but word spread fast. Within months, it was the most talked about show on television, and soon after, it was the most watched. All in the Family had become a cultural phenomenon. Jean Stapleton's departure from the series marked a major turning point. Contrary to tabloid rumors, she didn't leave out of anger or dispute. She deeply loved the role of Edith Bunker. But after nearly a decade, she felt the character's journey had come to a natural end. Stapleton feared being forever typecast, locked into Edith's high-pitched voice and gentle mannerisms. Though her appearances had already begun to dwindle by the final season, her decision still landed like a gut punch. When she spoke with Lear about her choice, she reminded him, Edith isn't real. But for Lear, and for millions of viewers, she was. The loss of Edith marked more than just a character exit, it symbolized the end of an era. The show itself was evolving. The cozy, kitchen table setting that had once anchored the series gave way to new storylines and locations. Archie bought the local bar, Kelsey's, forging Edith's signature in the process. This shift introduced fresh characters and tensions. Harry Snowden, the bartender, initially quit after clashing with Archie but later returned as his business partner. Meanwhile, Gloria and Michael moved out to raise their son, though their marriage began to unravel. Around the same time, Archie and Edith took in a young girl named Stephanie, abandoned by her father. These new arcs pushed the show into more emotionally complex territory. One particularly powerful episode showed Archie and Mike trapped together overnight in the bar's storeroom. After a few drinks and some late-night honesty, Archie shared memories of his abusive childhood. For the first time, he told Mike he loved him. It was a raw, vulnerable moment that showed just how far both characters and the show had come. When All in the Family came to a close in April 1979, it didn't go quietly. The final episode, Too Good Edith, was a tearjerker. Archie, unaware that Edith was hiding a serious illness, asked her to cater his St. Patrick's Day party at the bar. Wanting to support him, she pushed through the pain without saying a word. It was a poignant display of her selflessness. At last, Archie let his guard down, saying, "I ain't nothing without you." It was a moment of true, heartbreaking sincerity, one that left a lasting impression, but CBS wasn't ready to let go. Even though Norman Lear felt it was time to end the show, the network urged him to continue. Carol O'Connor agreed, on one condition: the show had to change names. That's how Archie Bunker's Place was born, and the spin-off ran for 4 more seasons, but something was different. Without Edith, the heart of the show was gone. One especially memorable episode featured Archie alone, sitting in his chair, talking to the empty space where Edith once sat. He pleaded for just one more chance to tell her how much he loved her. It was quiet, gut-wrenching, and profoundly human. Still, All in the Family's legacy only grew. It launched a universe of spin-offs: Maude, The Jeffersons, Good Times, Gloria. It wasn't just a show anymore, it had become a movement. It reshaped what television could be, tackling issues like racism, sexism, war, and economic inequality head-on. Decades later, its impact remained. In 2019, a live television tribute recreated classic episodes for a new audience. Featuring Woody Harrelson as Archie and Jamie Foxx as George Jefferson, it reminded viewers just how groundbreaking these stories were. Norman Lear, then in his 90s, introduced the special himself, still proud, still unafraid to stir the pot, because that was always the point. Not to play it safe, but to tell the truth even when it made people uncomfortable.